I think that I would like to focus a little bit more on the stimulus control piece of identifying the cues themselves, because I'm assuming that's a very important key piece of the clinical work. Could you say more about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's critical to identify the cues, and I think that's another place where the sort of simple things we would do for functional analysis can be really potent. So the idea of doing an ABC, your antecedent behavior consequence, you take rumination as the behavior, and then you're trying to track what comes before that.
Yes.
And often, there's going to be something happening in the world, so a situation, and then there will be some behavior by the client or other people around them, and then there will be some internal response, a thought or a feeling or a sensation. And what we'll be looking for is which of those comes before the rumination as part of a sort of sequence, part of a process. I mean, so a really good analogy to it that will be familiar to people who do cognitive behavior therapy is if you think about the model that the thing that you would do if you were investigating someone who was having panic attacks, you do a very fine-tuned, detailed analysis of what led up to the point when they were having the panic. So what was their thought, and then what effect did that have on their feeling, and then what effect did that have on their behavior, second by second, the sort of very detailed analysis of content to see the process of how it builds up. And we would do the same thing. We would ask people about their most recent examples of rumination. And we'd go through them second by second, as much detail as we can. What happened then, and then what happened after that, and what did you notice, and what did you feel, and what did you think, until we could map out that sequence. And we do that for a couple of examples, and then start to see if there are any commonalities in terms of what was happening. So that would be one way we would try and spot those triggers. The other thing that, of course, we would do that's very helpful is getting people to do self-monitoring. So having diary records that people would complete between sessions, where they would again themselves note down when they ruminated and what was happening just beforehand. And that can be doubly useful, both as something to discuss in the session as a way of identifying those warning signs, but also, as we know with lots of habits, becoming more aware of them is quite an important step. And actually having people fill in records and do some self-monitoring is often quite powerful in that.
So self-monitoring as a strategy for increasing awareness of the cues.
Yeah.
Yes. So let me shift a little bit, if that's okay, and ask you about cognitive restructuring. So your model suggests that cognitive restructuring is unlikely to be very helpful. Would you go so far as to say that it's contraindicated to treat rumination?
No, I wouldn't go that far. I think the argument would be that it's harder for cognitive restructuring to shift rumination. It can do so, but it can only do so under certain conditions.
Okay.
And that partly reflects the theoretical model, and it partly reflects our clinical experience. So, I mean, I did a lot of work at the beginning with people who were ruminating a lot, where I was taking a very traditional Beckian CBT approach, and it would help to some degree. But what we would find is often you could challenge one specific thought and do that really well together, and see that had changed. But then another thought would just come up. So there was something about it's only just one thought in this whole process that people who ruminate a lot have. So just taking it one thought at a time didn't seem a particularly.
Oh yeah, I had a patient once, she described it as mental ping pong. One thought comes up, we respond to it, then another one comes up, then we respond, but it just seems to go on and on. It doesn't really.
Yeah. And sometimes it's worse than that, because you get some patients, and this is partly a consequence. This is partly an interaction of a patient and possibly someone doing therapy less well. But you sometimes get the effect of, oh, I've challenged that negative thought, and then the patient goes, well, that's really obvious. Why didn't I think of that before? And then they start getting into a ruminative train about beating themselves up that they should have been able to spot and change their negative thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got those two issues. I mean, it's kind of like, there's two metaphors. There's a metaphor that your thoughts are a chain, and if you just break one link in the chain, you're okay.
Mm-hmm.
which if you did one good challenge might do that. But if you see the thoughts and rumination as kind of a flow of water, like a river or a waterfall, challenging one thought at a time is like stopping a drop of water, and everything keeps flowing on. So it seemed what we were trying to do was say, can we shift the flow? That doesn't mean we don't do thought challenging and we don't do Socratic questioning. It's not cognitive restructuring in the sense of we're looking at the accuracy or veridicality of thinking. But you'll be asking questions about the function or helpfulness of thinking, which is so you move to that kind of process level rather than that content level.
And would you say you might be asking questions? What helps me clinically, but tell me if I'm on track, is to ask questions about not just the function of any particular thought, but perhaps the function of the whole process, and to view the rumination as like a thing itself, as opposed to looking at each thought.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was the sense, is that we could get stuck in thoughts. And I mean, also reflects the fact that some people who ruminate really want to understand every little thing that's happening. So sometimes you need to move away from the meaning and the content and say, look, there's this process happening here. Let's look at the overall process